Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Still on vacation, still bringing you podcasts. And if anything big happens, you can still go to ESPN.com to check it out, but it's not going to be updated on this podcast. Anyways, today I'm bringing you Todd Archer, my ESPN colleague in Dallas. He knows a lot of the new commanders. He covered Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biadasz, Dante Fowler. So I talked to him about some of the newcomers for Washington, but also what's up with the Cowboys, because I want to take you around the NFC East before we get to training camp to see where do the Commanders fit in this division. Of course, we know like they're still not going to be considered one of the top two teams in this division, right? Not at this point, of course. But where are the Cowboys headed? And I'm going to bring you stuff on the Eagles and bring you stuff on the Giants. But let's talk about the Cowboys today, because that's a team that, obviously is always up there. Which direction will they go this season? What's going on with them? And then some insight from Todd on some of the newcomers in Washington. Anyways, here's my conversation with ESPN's Todd Archer. All right, Todd. Well, it's been a very interesting offseason for the Cowboys. We know some of the losses they've had because they're end up in Washington. Yeah, how would you describe their offseason?
All in. That's what Jerry said. They're all in. They've re-signed Zeke Elliott. They added Royce Freeman. They re-signed Chuma Edoga. Yeah, all in. Yeah, Jerry probably shouldn't have said it or shouldn't have kept saying it as well. But they lost a lot of guys. Let's be honest. Tony Pollard, Dorrance Armstrong, Dan Quinn, obviously Tyron Smith. Those are really big losses. Maybe they mitigated the Quinn loss by hiring Mike Zimmer, a guy with a long track record of success on offense. They drafted Tyler Guyton in the first round to be the left tackle. They're going to a running back by committee. We'll see how that really works. But it's not like the Cowboys. I always find it interesting. We always bemoan, or the fans or analysts say the Cowboys lost all this and not going to be any good, blah, blah, blah. And then the ESPN analytics come out and they have like the fourth or fifth best odds to win the Super Bowl. So there's still a lot of talent around here, I guess is what I'm saying. It's just a matter of everybody better have their career year, basically. And you know what? Daks on the last year of his contract, McCarthy on all the coaches last year of their contract. There's 15, 20 guys in the last year of their deals. So maybe that's all in, right? And maybe that's what Jerry meant, all in. Yeah, get it done now or you're all out.
Can that be because a lot of times, in those situations, guys playing for contracts, it can get a little bit touchy as well. How do you could this go a different direction, or do you still see it? Because like you said, every year it's like, and then boom, they have this offense that's really good, blah, blah, blah. But how do you see that playing out? Could it go a different way?
Not with Dak. Let me start with it. That's obviously the biggest one, right? Correct. And CeeDee Lamb's not signed yet, but they can put the franchise tag on him next year, and so he's still around. Dak sets such a tone in that locker room among all the players that since it's not going to bother him, it shouldn't bother anybody else either, right? And the 15 to 20 guys are in the last year of their deals. Okay, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin, those guys have been here 10, 11, 12 years now. So, and maybe it's 11. So they get it. They know. And then the other guys, a lot of the other guys that are on one-year deals are guys that are always going to be on one-year deals or guys that are going to be after their rookie contract fighting for that next contract. So I don't think that will be an issue provided they win early. If they don't win early, what do guys always say? Hey, receivers, running backs. Hey, as long as we're winning, I'm happy.
Right.
So right. I think that'll be the key. If you're winning, and then you're going to be happy that way.
What do you think happens with Dak's contract, with CeeDee's contract? And you said they could always franchise him, but do you think anything happens this summer? What do you think? How do you think that develops?
Yeah, I'll go with CeeDee first. I don't know. There seems to be a path to a deal now. Justin Jefferson's contract is done. So this could come down before training camp, during training camp. So I think that one will get done eventually. The Dak one is interesting. I think it could get done. Not will or would get done, could. And look, if he doesn't sign something by the start of the season, why would he sign during the season? So then that starts the clock. And the real deadline on Dak's deal is like March 13th or something of next year, when it's like the 2 days before the next league year starts. And that's when the $40 million in dead money comes forward, that you're almost guaranteed that he would not be here, because I don't know how you would structure that contract after that $40 million is on your books. So, but I do want to say this: for all the grief the Cowboys get about they waited too long, and there are arguments that say yes, they maybe they did. I think we also need to recognize the players opted to wait. Dak was staring at the Carson Wentz, Jared Goff deal in 2019 and said no. Pretty gutsy move. CeeDee Lamb is probably looking at a contract, or let's say before the Jefferson deal, was looking at a contract that would have been 28, 29, $30 million a year. I'm sure a huge amount of guaranteed money. And he said no. He was able to wait. Micah Parsons told us in the locker room during minicamp that for guys like him, the best thing to do is wait.
Sure.
And your favorite quarterback, Kirk Cousins, played it perfectly.
Yes.
By waiting. So, there's if you can have some patience as a player, maybe outweight the team, you're going to be okay.
Cousins, by waiting, and this team by botching it, put them on a road where there's been subpar or bad quarterback play ever since. So, like, Washington fans have seen the flip side of not keeping a guy who, regardless of what you think of Dak, he's a good quarterback, or however high you want to put him on the list. Life without that good quarterback can be kind of nasty. How much of there is that fear in Dallas?
Well, I think that's a fear that every team has, right? Not just because of everything. There's not enough of these guys to go around, right. But do you pay guys out of fear? And when you do, that's when you look at guys getting these contracts that maybe they're not worth it yet, or you're paying for hope of the future, not what the guy is actually proven. So the Cowboys don't have a track record of finding quarterbacks post Troy Aikman. It went a whole bunch of guys at a whole different routes. Heck, they signed 2 baseball players to be their quarterbacks. That didn't work. They drafted Quincy Carter in the second round, and then a whole host of veterans, Vinny Testaverde, Drew Bledsoe, guys like that. And they got lucky with this Romo guy. And then, oh, by the way, in 2016, they got lucky with a 4th-round pick who wasn't even their first 4th-round pick. But I do think – I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth there. I do think there's an element of – well, one thing Parcells used to tell us, you can't just 1-800 call a quarterback. Well, now it seems like teams can do that, or are more willing to do that. Right. And so maybe there's a Baker Mayfield type guy the Cowboys could sign next year to a contract as a bridge dude, or they give up a bunch of draft capital and move up and get a guy that way if they were to move on from Dak. Or, hey, if Trey Lance plays well in the preseason, then maybe the Cowboys just say, we'll just roll with this Lance guy and build up the roster around him.
What kind of loss?
They'd have to sign Lance, by the way, because he's also a free agent after this year.
What kind of loss was Quinn for them, and Joe Witt too? But what kind of loss was that?
It's big, obviously. I mean, you look at what he inherited and where they were defensively to what they became. It's a huge loss. They took the ball away better than any team in the league. They affected the quarterback with Micah Parsons, Dorrance Armstrong, DeMarcus Lawrence, a whole host of guys. But I think what has hurt Quinn's legacy here is how badly they played against Green Bay in the playoffs, and how badly they managed the linebacker position. And they really weren't great against the run. And some of that is size of players, other guys, first round pick, not really playing at all for you last year. They think they'll be more scheme sound and position sound this year under Zimmer than they were the last couple of years under Quinn, because as you saw it, he'd rather play safeties than linebackers. And I thought it was interesting that, he went out and drafted, obviously signed Bobby Wagner, right? And then added some size at linebacker. It's like, why didn't you think about doing that here? Because regardless of what people say, coach has got the most juice in this building in Dallas. And if you say you want this body type, you want this type of player, you get it. Now, I know he wanted Bobby Wagner. I just don't think the Cowboys were ever going to pay him whatever he got from the Rams in Seattle the last couple of years, and even Washington this year.
And just in terms of, you talk about scheme and all that, like Zimmer and Quinn are very different personalities as well.
Yes.
So how is that changed, and how was Quinn's personality with the players? Did they, I mean, he was there for 3 years. So when he comes in, there's a breath of fresh air. Was it always like that? And what's the change like with Zimmer?
Yeah, I think with Quinn, he's a guy that gets guys to play for him. And he does it by pumping them up, backing them up. Just kind of, I'm not saying be their friend, although I do think there needed to probably be some more accountability along the lines at different times for different guys. But it's hard to argue with the success that he had here. He changed what he was
right
in Atlanta when he came here. And that's a sign of a coach who gets it. So let's see how he continues to change that now that he's a head coach again. And if he delegates, or if he delegates, probably not the right word, how he changes his approach to what he was in Atlanta. But still, they went to a Super Bowl. And then obviously we all know what happened in that game and where it went from there. But it's a loss. But I think Zimmer's personality is probably what this team needs. It needs a little cussing out every now and then. And Zimmer's not afraid to do that. We haven't seen it yet. And I think some of it is he wants to get to know these guys and knows that, hey, I can pat this guy in the back or I can kick this guy in the butt before he actually figures out his strategy and how he wants to approach it. I thought it was interesting. One thing Micah Parsons told us is that he's probably not had 20 words with Zimmer since Zimmer became the coordinator. Told us that last week at the minicamp. That's rare, even though Micah, I know, hasn't been around. Phones still work. They can still talk. So I thought that was a interesting nugget that Micah dropped on us, that it seems like Paul Gunther, their new run game coordinator, he's the guy that's kind of become the Micah whisperer to what Dan Quinn was for his first 3 years.
How about Joe Witt? He's lost.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, he's more of the cussing coach, he'll tell you. And he's a guy who'll say, not all guys like to play for me because he's going to tell them the truth. I don't know how well their safeties played last year. Certainly, I don't think they played as well as they did the previous year. And that's when Witt was not around a whole bunch because he had some health issues. He was around, but just not on the field. And they had Cannon Matthews, who's now their safeties coach, to have a more hands-on approach. I do think it's telling, though, that Mike McCarthy said numerous times that Joe Witt can be a head coach, certainly can be a coordinator in the NFL. And when that job came open, he was not named the coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys.
Do you think that part of that was he was going to come with Quinn no matter what, or or is there something else there?
I can't answer that with any sort of background or knowledge of how the decisions went down. Clearly, he has a longer history with McCarthy from their time in Green Bay than what Witt had with Dan Quinn. So it could be a situation where Jerry Jones said, you had your chance to hire your defensive coordinator when you first got here, and you brought us Mike Nolan, and that was the worst defense in Cowboys history. We're going to dictate this one just a little bit.
So just 2 more minutes, Todd. 2 more.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong. What do you see them doing with Washington? What kind of role, what kind of, I guess, players did you see them being in Dallas for them?
I think for Dorrance Armstrong, I think he's a very underrated player. He's a guy who's quietly will get you 6, 7, 8, 9 sacks. Some of that because he was lined up with Micah Parsons, with DeMarcus Lawrence, with Osa Odighizuwa, a really good tackle that a lot of people don't know enough about. Or is it a product of what he's able to do? I think we'll find out some of that this year. I'm interested to see how when you move over one chair, how that 18 inches makes a difference, right? And with more attention on him, with the contract expectations, you're Quinn's guy. You better come through. But he is a guy that improved as much as any Cowboy that I've covered in the 20 forgetful years it's been covering this team. Biotish is a good, solid player. $10 million a year, I don't know. Struggles with size in front of him. He's not Travis Frederick, even though he went to Wisconsin and everybody thought it would just be a seamless transition. Did make a Pro Bowl. He is a tough guy. He's smart, understands fronts and how to get guys lined up the right way and everything like that. A good, solid guy that I think when the Cowboys use, Stephen Jones says, in free agency, you pay good players great player money. I think he would be an example of that. He's a good player who got great player money.
Todd, I told you 15 minutes. We hit it. Thanks.
That's it?
That's it. I
All
told
right.
you. I told you 15.
Miracles never cease.
Thanks, Todd.
You got it.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Todd for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode. So talk to you next time.